It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the 16th edition of School of Tomorrow events, Guardians of the Future, Shaping Tomorrow with Generative AI. The non-profit SOT event series was launched by Beacon House in 2000 to engage global communities in conversation that shape the future of schools and societies. I would like to thank Google for Education, the lead sponsor for SOT 2023, and their partner TechValley, our titanium sponsor UBL. Other key sponsors include My Backpack, MK Books, Allied Bank Limited, Habib Bank Limited, Wateen, and Intervote. We also thank our SOT supporters, including Paramount Books and Nestle Pure Life, who have contributed to this year's event. My name is Sadia Chand, and I am branch head at Beacon House F74. Please take a moment to note these important points. Please ensure your cell phones are on silent. In case of emergency, the exit point is at the back. Always stay calm and follow directions. Please use the SOT app to scan the QR code for Q&A and feedback. Share your thoughts on social media using hashtags Guardians of the Future and hashtag SOT 2023. If you need assistance, our ushers are here to help. For questions, please either use the flashcards to provide the feedback or the mobile app. The panel discussion is going to take 45 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A. Now I would like to introduce the moderator of this session, Ms. Tabinda Mazza. She is the Head of Education of Pakistan and MENA regions at Cambridge University Press and Assessment with 8 years of experience. Formerly with 14 years at Beacon House School, she started as an English teacher and advanced to the regional manager for training. In 2018, she earned an MPhil in Education Leadership and School Improvement at the University of Cambridge, UK. Ms. Tabinda Mazza, you are please requested to come up on this stage.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Sadia, for the introduction. We are now going to begin our panel discussion for today, the title of which is The Child's Cry, Labor, Abuse, and Lost Rights. Also, a warm welcome to the Day 2 of 16th edition of the Beacon House SOT, Guardians of the Future, Shaping Tomorrow with Generative AI. In order to talk about this very sensitive and very relevant topic to all of us, which is about children's right, children who we all work with, we all deal with, day in, day out, are the embodiment of hope, potential, and promise of a brighter future. We keep hearing stories, countless stories about children's rights, and some are good, some are bad, but we all understand that these are not mere numbers. These are stories of dreams deferred, potentials untapped, and innocence betrayed. This session today, with the help of the esteemed panelists, will assemble various domains about advocacy on child rights, uniting under the mission of child protection, and we would help with the questions and the insights that will come, that all of us can navigate the complex interplay of the socio-economic factors, of the gaps, and what we together as a community can do to make this space better and safer for our children. Just to introduce you to the panelists, I'll start with Valerie on the extreme left. Valerie is currently the CEO of Great Dreams Consulting. She's working on gender, rule of law, child protection, and justice with children experts with almost 26 years of professional experience in human rights, all based on evidence-based practices. She specializes on legal and policy reform, capacity building, engineering, and cross-cultural communications. An interesting thing about Valerie is that she speaks French, English, Spanish, German, Urdu, and Pashto. Okay. We may test that or see that during the time. Right. Another interesting and rather very serious things that I've read she has been working on things like anti-rape special committees, which were established by the Federal Ministry of Law and Justice, gender expert committee set up by the National Commission on the Status of Women, and her work has been instrumental in developing a lot of efforts and initiatives on child protection, women rights, even child courts. So there will be more to talk about, but Valerie, thank you very much for gracing us today. Thank you. I'll now move to Ahmed Shabbar. Ahmed is an environmentalist, a scientist, an engineer, and he's here with us to talk about environmental activism. But a very interesting link when I was reading about Ahmed was, what is the link of all of that with child protection? So there is a lot that Ahmed is going to tell us, because he brings with him a solution-oriented approach to waste management, and how during his journey, when he started his company Garbage Can, brought him face to face with all these child abuse and all the intricate things that we are talking about. Ahmed, we have read about the stories, and you were sharing when you got beaten up, when you were working with your company to clearing trash, when you were working with journalists to highlight news from environmental lens for legal battles, and he's been at the forefront of climate marches in Karachi and all. So we look forward to hearing more from you. I am now going to move to our online panelist, Amanda Munoz de Toro. Amanda, thank you very much for joining us. Amanda has experience in building and leading teams, providing life-saving humanitarian assistance. She is the founder and executive director of FINEX, which is a humanitarian legal aid organization. What does that organization do? This organization provides holistic legal protection and mental health awareness services to vulnerable asylum seekers crossing the sea from Turkey to Greece. You all have seen all such news over the social media, and it's great to know that there are organizations which are working to help with those. Amanda, we would love to hear about that. Amanda has finished her deployment as Oxfam's country lead for Ukraine response in Romania and Moldova, and she's also an Oxford alumni. Welcome online, and great to see you virtually again. Last but not least, another great panelist with us is Shayan Malik. Shayan is the founder and president of Save Our Children Foundation, which is an organization for the education and rehabilitation of street children. Shayan is also a very famous name in the fashion industry, because the other side of the coin, she's a dress designer also, and has represented Pakistan on many international forums. Again, very intriguing. So from the fashion world to child rights and protection, what happened, we will ask her about that. Shayan is the CEO, as I said, of Samanzar, which is a design enterprise, and very popular for its blend of history and culture. Shayan stepped into the development sector almost a year ago, and she has undertaken many interesting training programs in rural villages all over Pakistan. She has set up skill centers and doing market linkages for displaced refugees, rural communities, and another interesting thing was she's done a lot of work in which they have trained police officials, social welfare, child protection officers, and helpline staffs. Shayan, so much to learn from you.
Thank you.
Welcome to the session. I'll tell the audience a little about the format. We are going to begin with an opening statement by each of our panelists, and then I have some questions for them. You can also ask questions. So during the course of the panel discussion, please, there are ushers around. They will pass you cards. If you have any questions, pass them on to them, and we will at the end, ask those questions. All right, so that was the introductions done. I'm now going to invite each one of you to start off with an under 2-minute opening statement on what's your story, and then the work that you're doing related to the topic that we are. And I'll repeat that once again. We are talking today about the child's cry, labor, abuse, and lost rights. Shayan, if I may begin with you. Last night at the dinner, we were chatting, and you said, this story that you were at your outlet in Zamzama, and you saw some children outside. What happened next? Tell us about it.
So my outlet, my fashion and interior design boutique is in a very heart of Clifton. And there were many times there were children outside. Whenever I would park my car or go back, there were children outside, and they would be begging. So normally we would I had instructed my staff that they must give them water or little goodies and things like that. And they became very familiar with and felt, I think, maybe secure and safe. They would come in whenever they wanted something. And then if I was in my office and they saw me, they would just come and sit and start talking. And then I started hearing their stories. And their stories were little girls telling me that, if I had been born with a different mother, I would be able to go to school. So they were really heart-wrenching, and slowly I realized that these children begging on the streets are really not coming from poor or impoverished backgrounds. They are children who have been brought in from interior Sindh, or they have abusive fathers and brothers who are into drugs. And hearing their stories, and then I got a group of friends together. We followed them, and we discovered that they are actually living in the open air under a bridge, and they have no electricity, no toilet facilities, no water, nothing. So I went and spoke to the parents or the handlers, whoever they were, and I asked them that, what if we put these children into school? Would you allow that? And we had many different requests. Yes, you can give us 75,000 rupees per child, and then we will not allow them to beg, and you can have them, and you can take them, and you can put them into school. Anyway, the long story was that I didn't have a school. So I started a tart school inside the basti. We just set up a tart on the ground under a tree, and children would come and sit, and I hired one teacher, and we had a good interaction. I tried to put those younger children into the government schools, but they were not given admission because they had no learning, nothing. They didn't have any education. And then finally, realizing that I could not do this work alone, approached the government. And because consistently approaching the government and the administration, they said, okay, we'll give you a school. So they gave me a school inside. It was a Godam, actually. It was a Godam where all the junk had been thrown. We cleaned it up. We made a toilet there. And these children would come to us because we would actually bathe them, and we would give them milk and things. And eventually I made these little lockers that with the children's names on them, with only the key which was theirs. So they had a little space of their own. And that's how we started working with street children.
Wonderful. Excellent. I think, this is amazing, I must say. And so many words, while I read between the lines were about the lack of nutrition, the lack of space, the cooperation, but how in your own story, how you interacted with the government, and how when people collaborate, you can do amazing things. Excellent. Amanda, would you like to make your opening statement now? Could we come to you?
Sure. Thank you very much. Well, I think, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Great. That's great news. The statement that children are the future is not a cliche, empty statement for me, but it's a matter of fact. I think that the way that we treat children of today, the rights, the opportunities, the safety that we're able to provide will be the conditions of the type of the world that we will have tomorrow. The conflicts and the violence that we are seeing at the national, but also at the international level, are ensuring that thousands, if not millions of children will be what we have called in the past a lost generation. So children without opportunities, children that have been raised under occupation or at war, traumatized by displacement, and kids that know nothing else than violence. It's children that have endured generational trauma, but also trauma of themselves. And I think the conflict that we're seeing, the violence that we're seeing in Palestine with the West complicity is showing the little regard that there is for children's life and safety. In a matter of days, the world has killed thousands of children and further traumatized 1 million other children. And it's going to take a lifetime to deal with the long-term, life-changing consequences of this violence. This hinders any efforts that we might do for education, for psychological support, for integration, and for a healthy future. This conflict, but also hundreds of other conflicts, are affecting children across the world. It doesn't have to be only conflict. for example, displacement. So the decision of sending back to Afghanistan hundreds of thousands of undocumented migrants in Pakistan, including girls, is another example of how children's rights are not put as a priority. For the last 7 years, I have worked leading different humanitarian responses across the world, and I have worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of unaccompanied children who have fled different situations of violence in their countries alone, without any parents, without any family members. So kids that are crossing the ocean by themselves and arriving to new countries to start a life by their own. And what we see is that governments are not only creating the situations of violence that are forcing people to flee, but they're also continuing with institutional violence in Europe when people are trying to seek safety. So there's a dehumanization of the other, and that dehumanization includes children that are fleeing war. So I think we need to start from point zero. So we need to go back to seeing the value of all children equally and what's the importance of protecting them, so we can move from theory to practice, because the rights are there, the rights are on paper, they're just not being implemented. And we need to push our governments to protect the children, because again, they are the future. They are what the world will look like.
Absolutely. Amanda, thank you so much. And you've just touched upon the most pertinent things which are happening these days around. You've touched upon both the Palestinian crisis and, the displacement. Ahmed also wanted to touch upon that. But I would say, yes, there may be heart-wrenching tales for all of us, but kudos to people like yourselves who are still, working on it and not giving up. Thank you so much. So more to come, but I think now I will move to Ahmed. Ahmed, would you like to share your opening statement and the connection that you made?
Sure. Thank you so much for, and I'm glad that I'm sitting in the middle of such powerful women who are working for such an important issue, which usually gets brushed away, or people, especially in Pakistan, don't really focus on. So how and I wouldn't say that this is my main work, but I've been involved in raising this issue a little bit, especially since the last year or two. So my background is physics and engineering and nuclear reactors and working with NASA, etc. But I came back to Pakistan in 2016 and I started working in the waste management industry, because my point was that it's my right to live in a clean space. And when I started looking at the waste management industry, the very first thing, well, you do think about environmental issues. There is the recycling aspect of it. There is the sustainability aspect of it. I noticed the urban flooding issue, because the stormwater drains were full of plastic. You see smog as well. It's burning.
So much climate issues coming up.
Those climate issues. But then I also noticed several other social issues that were connected with it, and the most glaring one was the use of children in picking up waste.
Kachra uthane ke liye.
With we're just talking about this as well. The plastic bottle over here it can actually be considered a symbol of trauma for all especially the Afghan children that are picking up waste. So as Cheyenne started following them, I started following that thread as well. And it made me realize the role of women in waste management as well.
Okay.
Because then, when I was doing my research, I found out that this 73% of the primary waste managers in the world are women.
Okay, 73%.
73%, because they're usually the homemakers, right? So from the but the statistic for children involved in waste picking again was still missing.
So statistics the hi nahi.
I haven't really found them as much. And from there, I started looking at other issues as well. So we looked at the refugee crisis too. And I realized that so many Afghan children are involved in the informal industry, because the refugees who have been here, well, I mean, you can't even call many of them refugees. They've been here for over 40 plus years. Many of them have been born over here. They do not have any status, even though they might have those POR cards, some might have ID cards as well, but they're treated as, there's no status at all, not even second-class citizens, but they're not treated as anything at all. So they cannot exactly go into mainstream work. So if they're not able to go into mainstream work, they try to get work wherever possible. And that's one of the reasons why you see so many Afghan community members in the waste management industry, and you see so many Afghan children in the waste management industry.
Okay.
But the issue is we also then got stuck with the mafia too, which ends up, there are of course financial issues, but then they end up exploiting the kids. We were just discussing with Valerie how the kids, if you look at them as a commodity, while picking up these plastic bottles or cardboard boxes, etc., they're not paid any fees per se. They're paid in meals.
There's no wages.
Yeah, there are no wages. They're paid in meals. But then during the day, that's what the utility is. During, at other hours, then the kids' utility is in abuse.
And you said it leads to drugs and other forms of
perpetuation of
substances,
drug addiction, substance addiction, and everything as well. So yeah, so that's how I started looking at all of these issues, and I realized that waste management itself is not in a vacuum. It's very intersectional with environmental, climate literacy and climate advocacy. So I started the environmental, where we focus on climate literacy, and Pakistan Maholiyati Tahaffuz movement, which is focused on all aspects of environment. And I say very clearly, as she pointed out, Amanda pointed out the Palestine issue, that there cannot be climate justice while there's a genocide going on.
Absolutely.
Similarly, there cannot be climate justice while there's child labor or an exodus of the refugees, etc., going on at this point.
No, I think, thank you so much, Ahmed. And, again, something that, although, we are sitting at an SOT conference, which is, by schools, and the link that you have created. So yes, I think nothing in our society exists in vacuum. Everything is interrelated. Yeah. How you said, we are all dealing with children. We are talking about out-of-school children, and how you have beautifully connected this. So I'll come to you with more questions, but not least, Valerie. So what's the story? How did you, 26 years of work, started as a teacher. So what brought you in touch with the legal side, the policy making, and what's your stance on the topic?
So my stance on the topic is that I'm really grateful that you decided to include it as a topic for discussion. Thank you so much for this.
We must thank Beacon House for that. I think it's a very, very pertinent topic.
So thank you, Beacon House. Personally, as a teacher, actually, I guess my story, apart from being a teacher, an important point in my story was that I was fired from my international school, and that's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Wow.
Because I think it was, although I was very privileged, but my other colleagues who also were fired were not necessarily that privileged, and I fought those layoffs on the issue of labor rights for adults, which basically...
So there was an activist in you.
Yeah, definitely. But that also allowed me to understand how upholding adult labor rights had a direct impact into families and therefore children's safety and security, etc. And then from there, because I was taking that case on an advocacy basis in a foreign country, since it was an international school, an NGO recruited me as a capacity, head of the capacity building department, and that NGO was working on child rights. And for me, it was really an eye-opener because, again, as you say, that those multiple intersections, the overall spectrum of child rights and how everything is interrelated really opened in front of me. And I guess this is also how I discovered and learned through also, and thanks to the mentoring of many Pakistani women activists, professionals, and politicians, how for change, and change is possible, you really need to articulate that in a holistic manner and at a structural as well as institutional and socio-cultural level.
Thank you so much. And I think a very positive end when you said change is possible. So talking about hope. So let's move to some questions that I would now ask. Amanda, if it's okay, I would like to start with you. Beyond the immediate harm, we've talked about, the trauma that these children, the asylum seekers, or, in war conflict zones, that, the immediate harm that they face. What are the long-term societal implications, even if these children settle somewhere, in terms of how do they ever heal, in simple words? And how can, what kind of strategies and interventions can be used to help them?
Thank you for that question. Well, I think that there's two different scenarios, right? The first scenario is a scenario in which children live in refugee camps and therefore they don't really settle. And as the other panelists were saying, situations in which they don't have the documentation to be treated as a citizen of that country. And in that case, we have children in very precarious situations in which they're not able to access education, or they access education, but it's not formal education, which therefore creates many long-term impacts on how they're going to be able to integrate into society. And then you have children that will be able to get refugee status in a country like Greece, but situations in which there's a lot of discrimination and racism, situations in which they have refugee status, but they're not allowed or they're not able to register in the schools with the Greek citizens, or as we saw from the start, that the way that people and children are treated when they arrive to a new country is going to impact their perception of how that country and how the citizens of those countries see them. From a mental health perspective, we have seen all sorts of consequences in children's mental health. So children that withdrew and were kids that were perhaps 6, 7 years old and went to not speaking. This is a phenomenon that has been seen in many refugee camps in which children have an absolute withdrawal. There's no medical reason for the lack of speaking, but it's children that don't interact, don't speak, barely walk. We have seen children that were independent in their use of the toilet and also go back. So all of these things have a long-term impact, and they need long-term interventions, mental health support, but above everything, safety. Okay. So a situation in which kids can feel safe. About interventions, what we did in Greece is
if I may ask you to elaborate on when you say safety, is it physical safety? Are we talking about what does that mean in this situation?
Well, it of course starts by physical safety. So arriving to Greece is a first step in that journey, but it doesn't stop there. Okay. So not only the country has to be safe, but they also have to feel like their stay in that country is safe. Not the constant fear that they will be deported back to the place.
Because you may still be at a shelter and not feel safe. Yeah. Okay.
That's a second level. So we have seen in the camps in Greece many children that were treated as adults, and they were housed in tents or in containers with adults, and that's a second situation in which kids are suffering sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and exploitation, because they're not put in conditions where children should, they're not sent to shelters for children. So there's many levels to safety. And we have seen violations on different levels of safety. So something that is very common in Greece is that to reduce the statistics on the amount of unaccompanied children that are arriving to the country, is that they register them as adults, as single men. And then if children are registered as single men, the chances of them being rejected in their asylum claim are much higher. And then they don't also have the protections that they're entitled to under the law, which is education, a safe place, a shelter, a guardian, and different entitlements that are specialized under the law. That's why before at the beginning I was saying, fortunately we have a really strong legal framework in most countries in the world, but what we're lacking is an implementation of those frameworks. So we need to go from theory to practice. And that's why it's important to have a lot of civil society organizations that are pointing out the violations and trying to get governments and state actors to implement these rights.
Thank you so much, Amanda. So again, collaboration, as you said, it's not one person's job. Cheyenne, moving to the socio-economic factors that we were talking about, that you've been working with the children, the street child. How much the socio-economic factors play a role in perpetuating child labor and abuse, in your opinion? And do you think that as a society we can empower, or we can be empowered to break this vicious cycle, making sure that because poverty still remains there, but do you think we can break this cycle and it still doesn't rob children of their rights?
So before I answer this question, I have a question for the audience.
Okay.
how many of you, you know that there are these children on the streets, and you think that they are very poor, and you will take out a 100 rupee note or maybe a 20 rupee note from your bag and give it to these children when you are in your car moving from one place to the other. So does anybody do that?
I have done that, yes.
I'm guilty of that as well, absolutely, yeah.
Very.
Sometimes, yeah.
No, I'm just asking if anybody does that.
Have you? I have done that.
I've done that in the past.
Not anymore,
Right.
but yeah.
Okay. So here we talk about the socio-economic reasons for this. The children that you see on the streets, because I've interviewed a lot of children, I've rescued a lot of children. The children come from backgrounds where they are either kidnapped, they're either sold by their parents, or they are very young girls, ages of 13, 14, who are married off only to reproduce children, because these children are a great source of earning tools. They are a business. And every time one of us gives that business fuel by giving that money to a child, we are encouraging that business. So we are all part of a very, I would say, illegal system, as well as being not conscious of the fact that these children are subject to child abuse.
What do we do, Shayan?
First of all, you need to create an awareness that who are these children. And these children are actually put into drug abuse, because they're given drugs, so that either a baby is sleeping all the time. The children that you see on the laps of women at the traffic signals, these children don't have a very long span of life.
Oh my.
They are the children that the police eventually finds in garbage cans, who are just disposed of or thrown away. It's an extremely heart-wrenching situation. But we still, society doesn't seem to look at it. We wear these rose-colored glasses, and we think that, okay, let's give them the loose change here and look the other way. But society doesn't seem to understand that when we do that, you are encouraging a business of child abuse. More children are going to be kidnapped, more children are going to be sold, more children, young girls are going to be married off at very young ages, give birth to 10 children so that those 10 children can earn. It's a earning vicious cycle.
How do we break that, Shayan?
We have the laws. There are laws in our constitution which say that this child abuse does not take place, and if it does take place, we have acts and laws which give punishment to people who use children illegally.
Okay, I'm going to build on this question, Valerie, and come to you while we talk about laws and policies. So yes, you know, as Shayan is saying, there are policies, there are laws. So all these legislative frameworks, you know, of course, they are very vital in safeguarding children, but are there, it's a too naive a question, but we know that gaps exist in the implementation. So what can we do about these, and what are the laws, if you can tell us a few things that are more important in Pakistan, and are they implemented?
So when you talk about the legal framework in Pakistan, you need to start from your international obligations, because Pakistan was the first Muslim country in the world and the 6th country in the world to ratify the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. You also have a set of constitutional provisions that do ensure that each citizen, so that means including children, are protected and avail dignity, and that nothing can stop the state from legislating in a specific manner to protect women and children. And then you've got the Pakistan Penal Code with several sections that are there to hold perpetrators of crimes against any citizen, but including crimes against children, accountable. Specific one related to trafficking, recently ones related to sexual violence, the Anti-Rape Trial and Investigation Act, for example. And then at a provincial level, a Prevention of Trafficking Act as well. When we're saying selling your children, we're talking about trafficking. And it doesn't have to be cross-border trafficking. We're also talking about internal trafficking. Forced labor is an offense under the PPC. And then you have also a set of provincial laws at provincial level that are called child protection laws. The problem, as you say, so there are a few legal lacunae, yes, but the thing is that you also need systems, and those systems need to be systemic and multi-sectoral to actually enforce those laws. And while doing that, what we need to ensure, because it's very complex, it's not easy. It's easy to judge, and it's another story, to enforce that. Ensuring that at each step of that action, the best interest of the child is going to prevail. And contrary to what we may be thinking, the best interest of the child is not necessarily to be separated or taken away from the family.
Okay.
All right, so we tend to do that. We also need to be careful with the fact that protecting children should not be criminalizing poverty. A lot of child rights violation and violence against children is fed not only, certainly not, but one of the drivers are socio-economic inequalities.
Absolutely.
And so we need to also address that in a more systemic manner.
And how can we do that simply?
Okay.
And I would like, the rest of you to pitch in also, but what's your suggestion? How can we bridge that?
I mean, an example among many things, again, it's a very holistic and various strategy, but for example, when you see a child begging in the street, we have seen some example where the mother was alone and the gender framework did not allow her or did not empower her to work outside, for example, okay? Rather than arresting the child or criminalizing the mother, one of the action was first to engage with the child, trace the child family, go back to the mother, try to find economic support for the mother, make them realize and accompany the family about what is the parent responsibility, male, female, guardians, I would say, not only parents, but guardian even, and support these guardians to actually take the child and have it monitored, whether by a child protection officer or a court, and the judge who takes a decision. That's ideally what should be happening, rather than shifting those children to orphanage or institutions.
So there are no shortcuts about it, as we said.
Yeah.
Would you like to add anything? Shayan?
I would like to add. Actually, I would also like to add incident which recently happened in Karachi. We look at social media only when incidents happen. Do we then think, oh yeah, we should have prevented it? I think the prevention should take place much before. And now, because I work closely with police, I work with the child protection officers, and I work with magistrates. So they require a great amount of trainings, and it is right, systems have to be put into place. But part of those systems is our civil society as well. Like there are laws which we are trying to implement now. It's the duty to report. Every citizen has a duty to report. Not only a citizen, but government officials. Like the first point of contact for a police, traffic police person is when a Suzuki load of children is brought into a certain locality and they are taken off the van and they're placed in different positions, and then in the afternoon little biryani packets are brought and they are given. It is the duty of the police, traffic police, to report that to the Child Protection Authority. This does not happen. This is a system that we need to put into place. We also have a child helpline, which is 1121.
1121. How many of you, just with a show of hands, knew about this child protection helpline? Okay, a few. But today, at least, when you go out of this room, you all know that, and about the most important thing you've said, the duty to report.
The duty to report any incident that you see. So 1121 is the child protection helpline.
It's a national helpline?
It's a national helpline. I know it's active in Lahore and I know it's active in Karachi. Other provinces I'm not sure about. But anyway, this is a helpline, and the system which is supposed to work is like you call 1121, 1121 will notify the immediate area police station, the Thana. Plus, it will also notify the child protection officer. And the child protection officer, with the help of the police, is supposed to rescue the child. Now, a child is not supposed to be taken into a police station because that is very traumatic for any small child. And if they are taken there, it will have a very adverse effect on children. So it's the child protection officer's duty to take them to a safe place, a shelter where things the child would feel comfortable about. Now these shelters exist, but the system doesn't work. Because the system doesn't work for the simple reason, like I'll talk only about Sindh, where there are 6.5 million children who are out of school.
Yes.
And 30 districts in Sindh has one child protection officer per district.
30
Can these 30 people actually take care of children there are 6.5 million. We're only talking about the children out of school. Yeah. When you're out of school, you are easily on the road, or you're working as domestic help, or even worse, you are working in mines, or you're working as workers.
Totally
very unsafe environments that you're working. Can one child protection officer actually in his district monitor where child abuse is occurring? No. So this is a system that needs to be put into place.
Yeah, I think two very important points, about systems and structures, that are present. Ahmed, coming to you, I would like you to comment on the links that we were talking about in terms of being, an environmental activist, seeing so many changes in, the climate, that crisis that we've been talking about. So what are the, in children's safeguarding and child protection, how does that fit in?
Right. I also wanted to add on to
sure.
the comments by Shahan and Valerie as well. That we, as far as systems and structures are concerned, we also need to push both the informal industry and the formal industry into making sure that you're not working with entities that are working with children. Unfortunately, within the informal industry, the kids are there, and considering the socio-economic factors, especially say after the floods or
what is the informal industry for the layman? What does that mean?
The largest informal industry, of course, is the waste management industry.
Okay.
Right? Like within the waste management industry, they're not, because they're not registered. They cannot register businesses like etc. So they don't register with SECP, FBR,
okay. So
and they're not regulated. They're not. So, but we need to not force them per se, but we need to formalize them, because relief always starts bottom to top, and reform is always top bottom. So we need to push the corporates to stop working with them, and people like ourselves as well, because it is in our interest. Because when a child comes in to pick your trash, he may charge 50 rupees or 100 rupees. But when an adult comes in to pick in trash, he may charge you 500 to 1,000 rupees.
Yeah.
Right? So, but then within, there are inflationary shocks. So we then, we try to, get rid of the trash at for as cheap as possible. And then of course, more and more people have had to have their kids employed in industries. So and that's what I say as well, if I wanted to get rich within the waste management industry, I would have hired 100 bachas, and literally within 2 months, I would be
cheap labor,
very rich. But I've self-regulated myself, and we've had only people, adults working in in our
Excellent.
company, and of course, with minimum wages, etc. But everybody needs to do that. I know big corporations who we'll have Afghans pick our trash.
Close an eye.
But how does that? And on the other side of things, Shahan just mentioned there are 6.5 million people, 6.5 million children out of school. After the 2011, in Sindh only.
Yeah, Pakistan has over
23.5 million overall in the country.
And after the 2010 floods, there were 2 million kids that were out of school a year later. So, and we don't have any stats for the 22 floods as well. So just imagine how many many more kids, and especially girls, would be out of school, and then as Shahan mentioned, employed in various begging industries and so on.
We've talked about the undernutrition or malnutrition and how it impacts later.
And I also wanted to add an incident with the Afghan exodus that's happening right now. Just yesterday, because my colleagues are working in Karachi at the moment, and they're running from one detention center to the next. Because when I say climate activism, I don't just say, oh, environment or smog. Or when I say climate activism, we talk about law and order. There is a huge impact on law and order because of the 2022 floods. Because if there's food insecurity, people will steal. And we need systematic
how linked everything. It's like an ecosystem. One thing's impacted, it impacts all our lives. So
the entire blame is that the Afghan refugees are impacting our economy, so they need to be kicked out. But then just yesterday, a Pakistani Pashtun's kid who's Pashtun and who's Pakistani, and he's 17, he doesn't have his ID card. He was picked up and sent to Afghanistan as well. But how can we, allow that to happen? How can we justify that to happen? And I was looking at all the laws, because we also work with Public Interest Law Association of Pakistan. We collaborated with them to gather data. There's so many laws. But there's no
how much implementation?
Yeah.
I think Ahmed has hinted at some very important things. The individual level at which all of us must and can add as members, and that makes the thing work. Otherwise, no one person can do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I also want to mention that the laws seem to be non-uniform as well, because in Sindh, apparently, kids under 18 cannot be employed at all. Whereas in Punjab, 15 to...
I think it's 14 above child can work.
KPK 12.
KPK 12. Above 12 can work.
Can work in the light industry?
Even 12 can work in the light industry.
In the light
industry.
Yeah.
And Punjab?
And above 14, they can work. They can be employed in heavy
above 14,
hazardous
any
waste.
kind of work they can do.
In Punjab, it's 15 to 18, and then above 18, they can be.
Okay.
So they're completely non-uniform laws amongst provinces as well.
So I think that kind of what you were saying, it's taking us towards a very interesting pattern that there is a lot of policy, but there is less implementation. There is no uniformity that we see, and so much to do. We now have 8 minutes left. I'm going to ask you some quick questions, so any one of you can answer that. Amanda, coming back to you, and I would request some brief, quick answers on that. What actions, although Ahmed has talked about it, but about the individual action we can take in households, but the kind of work you are doing, let's say asylum seekers or at the international, can I add as an individual, what can I do to help you or organizations like yourself?
Thank you for that question. I think we should also, I think a good step is that we all start by helping in our own country. So I'm very, very impressed by the work of the different panelists trying to tackle child abuse and exploitation in their own countries. I think that's very admirable, and that's a very, very excellent work to do. Not all of us have to work in an international context. From an international perspective, as I was saying before, we all need to take responsibility for the violations that we're seeing. So we need to protest, we need to push our governments to do more. And then, of course, there's always volunteering opportunities. We have lawyers from all over the world, psychologists from all over the world that come to work with us in our organization.
Thank you. So, we are sitting, in a place which is, we have children and parents, and also raise your voice wherever you can register your protest and all. Thank you so much. The next question I'm going to ask, and any one of you can answer, in Pakistan especially, we are all used to the phenomena of underage house help, and Valerie corrected me by saying that the correct terminology is children engaged in domestic labor. Very common, we all have heard about it. When we talk to people, and I have had a discussion with cousins and friends, and they say, no, they're poor, we give them food, they're in a better sheltered position, so it's okay, because they're eating well, they're fed well, but they're still doing work that maybe a 10-year-old child shouldn't be doing. What should we do as individuals when we see this in our society?
Duty to report.
First of all, you need to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, would I tolerate that for my own child? Number one. I will include myself in this, we need to stop being hypocritical.
Stop getting
being hypocritical. We're not doing
And
any good
defensive
deed
about it, yeah.
by giving food to someone. Okay, we're just exploiting a child.
Wow.
All right, this is exploitation, this is child abuse, this is violence against children. We are taking childhood dignity, the right to cry, the right to make a mistake, the right to play, the right to spend time with your own. This is what we're taking away. If we really want to do good, and I think Pakistan is one of the excellent countries to foster that. You have one of the most dynamic charity giving countries in the world. It's proven statistically. If you really want to do good, pay at least the minimum wage to adult guardians.
Absolutely.
That will, trickle down to their family. It's not the only solution, but as a citizen, that's number one. It will, when you do something good for a child, because the problem is multisectoral, the positive impact are also multisectoral.
Absolutely, as you said, trickle down. Thank you so much for this. My next question is about these cases of child abuse, again, the domestic labor that we keep on saying, sexual abuse of children working in houses or, child beaten up by that. And then there's a lot of hype created on social media. We all follow that and say, so bad, bahut bura ho gaya. After some time, we don't hear much about those cases. Can one of you tell us, because you follow these people through, what happens to these cases?
So I have one example of a case, and that will bring me down to the magistrates as well. So what happens is, normally, because we train the police and the child protection officers to actually rescue children, and they have to be taken to the magistrates within 24 hours. What our experience is that when they go to the magistrate says, oh, why have you brought this child? It's poverty, and please, take the child. And the child is given back to the handler. So a case happened during the floods where an 8-year-old girl was brought by her mother. 8-year-old, after the floods. She was brought, and there's this mall, which is the Dolman Mall in Karachi.
Yes.
That little child was literally sold to these 3 men who came up in a car and said, we'll give you 10,000 rupees, please go and buy yourself atta or rations. The child was taken for the whole night. She was raped, and then she was thrown back in the same vicinity where she was picked up. The child was then taken to the Jinnah hospital, and she was looked after. The police officers that I was in touch with when this happened, I kept telling them that they found the perpetrators, the rapists, and they arrested them. But our system is such that until a complaint is made by the mother of the child, they cannot be penalized.
So it's mostly like settled between them?
It's settled. The money is paid, and the woman actually left after this child was given
Can't
treatment.
The state
she left.
Become,
Yes, it should. This child should have become then taken care of by this administration. If a mother is also a perpetrator and is doing such a thing to a child, there has to be a system.
And we hear in so many stories of sexual abuse and all that, they are just told to quiet enough
they
by
have
the
to
mothers.
told to be quiet, and then they are paid a certain amount of money, and the whole case is hushed up, and it's finished.
Okay.
So the one thing which we are really working for, I think it is there in Punjab, but we don't have it in Sindh, is that we do not want the child to go to the courts. We want the courts and the magistrates to come to the child. If the child has an issue, is rescued, should be in a safe environment.
So I think,
and in that environment, the magistrate needs to come to the child. What will happen is that the magistrates dealing with children's cases will themselves be educated to know what a child's rights are, what is the law required, and how people who are mistreating or abusing children have to be punished. Without this, child abuse will continue.
Thank you, Shayan. A very quick question, Ahmed. So just, I know, it's all heavy stuff for all of us, but talking about, we are all talking about positive things we can do. So in your capacity, when you say, if you were to kind of institutionalize, or I would say inculcate some more education into this element, how can, what can you do about it, or what suggestions would you have if you were to train people more, raise awareness?
Yeah, well, first of all, the responsibility lies with us and with those of us who are in the government. especially those of us who are in the government, to actually implement all of these laws and rules and regulations and so on. But as far as creating awareness and positive change is concerned, just think of the kids as human. They just stop looking at them as commodities. I mean, there's
so what I'm trying to, absolutely agree. But in terms of, let's say, climate education and how it's interlinked, schools at the moment, at the primary level and all, there are no curriculums, or there may be subsumed activities about it, but do you think that should be taught in schools in some way?
Absolutely. And the impact of, again, as Shayan just pointed out, I didn't know that it was a flood-affected person that you had mentioned that. Yes. So such stories need to be taught, if not at the high school level, but at least at the college or the university level for sure. So that when by the time the kids grow up, they have that level of empathy.
So again, we are talking of life skills like empathy and, knowing about things, not just subjects that we are talking about. Thank you very much. Do we have time for questions? Sorry? Okay. So I'm quickly going to ask this question, which has come from the audience. Refugee children often face compounded risks. What interventions and support systems can be employed to address their unique challenges? Who would like to take this? Ahmed?
I'll just talk about one of the interventions that we just did on 1st November, which was the deadline for to kicking all the Afghan people out. We registered the case against, and we made the state party.
Is there any progress on it?
It's in the Supreme Court right now, and we're looking at it. But there were only 13 petitioners that took it up. So just think about it. It's such a huge. And since then, we've been working with this civil society in Sindh and in Punjab, and all across Pakistan. And now there's about 250, 300 signatories in it. But unfortunately, I wanted to point out, with this issue, there's so many human rights associations as well that have favored kicking the refugees out.
Oh wow!
So just think about that. It's such a
I think it's linked to what Amanda was also saying. The hypocrisy that you see, the selective.
So again, with the refugees things, we need to push the government to not shove it under the rug.
Okay. Yeah. Would anyone like to add to this?
I think there's a question, probably, maybe from the audience we could take.
The questions are here, Okay. So the next one, I'm just going to read that out. How can international legislative and policy frameworks be adapted to better protect displaced persons, especially children, amidst the complex geopolitics of refugee situation?
There are two things. Okay, Pakistan has not ratified the Convention on Refugee, all right? But you have what you call international customary law, and under international customary law, Pakistan is bound to ensure that whenever someone is sent back because it is illegal in the country, that person does not face danger. And they are, according to the UNHCR, what you call the best interest determination protocol, and you need to follow that to take that decision. And secondly, you also have a kind of intersecting issue, which is statelessness, and what you mentioned. So that as per Pakistani law, if you were born in Pakistan, you can be a Pakistani citizen. So it's not a legal issue. Then there is a caveat which people play upon, but it's really more about, I think, in my view, engaging with the decision makers in the country, discussing the issue, and trying to find solution as per law, and probably raise awareness and build capacities on that.
Okay. So, would you like to add anything?
I'm very much in favor of building awareness, because really it's our society which will, and the youth, which will eventually take this mission forward, because it's the youth who have the same passion, and they just need to know about what actually constitutes child abuse. I have written a play which more or less says it all. It's a musical play, and we've already done it with the Zabest students.
Wonderful.
I'm going to be doing it with the Beacon House students as well. We will be taking this play all over Pakistan to different universities. The name of the play is Jawab Dena Hoga.
Okay.
इसका मतलब है आपको मुझे eventually जवाब देना होगा. We have to be accountable for why our children are suffering abuse. So this is a play, and this is what I'm doing all over. Other than
We will
that,
look out to, read and, post.
we also
post
through
about it,
songs, through music, we do have the youth come in and interact, and we try to put it on our social media.
Excellent.
Social media is a fabulous platform.
Under what name do you do that?
Save Our Children Foundation.
Save Our Children Foundation. So we can all look for.
So
Amanda, would you like to add anything to this question? Are you?
I think a lot of it has been covered. But again, on the international arena, the minimum standards for refugees are there. So I think what has been said about raising awareness, about investing that awareness in our youth is very important. And we have seen how much the youth is invested in activism, in having,
having
a
voice
world that defends rights. So we've seen this in the last couple of weeks, and I think there is a very big opportunity to do that and to expand that to what's happening to children in each of the countries, and not only about what's happening in Palestine or a country that is foreign to our own.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm going to wrap up the session now, but although it was a very difficult topic, and while we were discussing and listening to each other, the stories are harrowing, difficult, heart-wrenching, but at the same time, the panelists here, each one of them is a ray of hope, I feel, the kind of work we are doing. And the message that I'm taking back from this session is that, yes, amidst the injustice and all these tales that there is still hope, and there is this message that we at an individual level can make a difference, and we should not give up. When you look up the definition of what are children's rights, according to the UN, it talks about their right to protection, education, healthcare, shelter, good nutrition. I also, so it's, if you sum it up, it's about their survival and development. It's about protecting them from violence, abuse, and neglect, whether in home, house, or out of that, and providing them an education that enables them to fulfill their potential, be raised by or have a relationship with their parents, and last but not least, express their opinions and be listened to. And all of us here are agents to take it out. When you get out of this room, even if you talk about this to one person, if you remember that number where you can report things that Shayan said, you will make a difference. So this is what we will leave you with. Be a change agent, for the future generations that are coming to. I would also like to wrap up and thank Beacon House for providing myself and all the panelists this opportunity to talk about this very, very sensitive and pertinent issue, and to be able to talk about it. So thank you very much, each one of you and the audience.